So friends, we just learned a little bit. We got a small glimpse of what the Georgia State Grand Jury thought of Donald Trump's election crimes. And I have to tell you, I like what I'm seeing. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, the Georgia State Grand Jury report regarding its investigation of Donald Trump's election crimes was just released. And although it's highly redacted, there are some really important justice breadcrumbs in it for us to follow. Let's start with a new reporting from the Daily Beast. Headline: Georgia Grand Jury recommends indictments for witnesses in Trump election case. And that article begins, a special purpose grand jury has recommended an Atlanta area prosecutor, District Attorney Fani Willis, seek indictments as part of her investigation into former President Donald Trump's attempts to surreptitiously fake Georgia ballot results to steal the 2020 election. The highly redacted report doesn't say whether Trump himself should be indicted, but jurors do want their local prosecutor to punish witnesses who lied about what happened. And then this quote from the grand jury report, quote, a majority of the grand jury believes that perjury may have been committed by one or more witnesses testifying before it. The grand jury recommends that the district attorney seek appropriate indictments for such crimes where the evidence is compelling, says the report, which was only partially released on Thursday morning. Now, friends, undoubtedly, that's an important finding, that witnesses lied to the grand jury when they were subpoenaed to testify about Donald Trump's election crimes, and those lies will have some really important consequences, but I'm going to ask you to put a pin in that for just a few minutes. We're going to come back to it because, with all due respect to the Daily Beast, I think they kind of buried the lead. Because what I found most important about what was just revealed in this highly redacted grand jury report, and what I found to be the most important indicator that indictments undoubtedly are coming, can be found in this passage from the grand jury report. The grand jury says, following is the final report of the special purpose grand jury. We set forth for the court our recommendations on indictments and relevant statutes, including the votes by the grand jurors. This includes the votes respective to each topic indicated in a yea, nay, abstain format throughout. Why do I say that's the most important passage? Because, friends, it's right there in black and white. They said, here are our recommendations on indictments and relevant statutes. What can we infer from that? Well, you don't say, hey, judge, here are the indictments we're recommending, and the relevant statutes, the laws that we believe were violated and by whom. You don't say those kind of things in your report if you concluded that there were no crimes committed, or if you concluded that the evidence is just not sufficient to charge anybody with crimes. That right there is a sure sign that indictments are coming. The special purpose grand jury heard from all of these reluctant witnesses. We'll talk about who those witnesses were in a minute when we get to the liars. And they concluded that there were crimes committed, these statutes were violated, and here come our recommendations about who should be indicted and for what. And then, friends, the grand jury report says one other thing that I want to share. It says the grand jury heard extensive testimony on the subject of alleged election fraud. They heard from poll workers, investigators, technical experts, and state of Georgia employees and officials, as well as from persons still claiming that such fraud took place. We find by a unanimous vote that no widespread fraud took place in the Georgia 2020 presidential election that could result in overturning that election. And friends, after saying that, and after saying, and Judge, here are our recommendations about who should be indicted and what statutes were violated, we get redactions. So this report doesn't go on to name the people that the special grand jury says should be indicted for their crimes. So we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But friends, we are close. And it sure seems like Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is going to be the first one out of the blocks with criminal indictments of a former president, and it looks like others as well. Now, let's turn to the liars, because you heard that passage from the Daily Beast article where the grand jury concluded that one or more people lied to them about, the election fraud, the election crimes that were committed in Georgia. And when people go before the grand jury, they're placed under oath and they lie in their testimony, you know what happens? This is a beautiful word to a prosecutor's ear. We get leverage. When they lie, we get leverage. What do I mean by that? I dealt with more witnesses than I could ever count in my decades as a federal prosecutor. I put witnesses in the grand jury early and often, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. It's the stock and trade of prosecutors. You put witnesses before the grand jury, you indict, you try cases, you do it all over again. And when I had witnesses that I suspected might lie in the grand jury, and there were three main reasons witnesses were lie. One, they were trying to protect the target of the investigation, in this case Donald Trump, so they lied about his crimes. Or two, they were scared of the target of the investigation. They didn't want to snitch. They didn't want to be put in harm's way, so maybe they were loyal to the target. Maybe they were scared of the target and of the implications of telling the truth about the target's crimes. Or the third reason was maybe they were complicit in those crimes. Maybe they were part and parcel of the election conspiracy crimes that Donald Trump and others were committed, so they lied, right? They didn't want to tell the truth because it would incriminate them. Of course, they always had the option and the unfettered opportunity to plead the fifth and say, I decline to answer those questions. But you can't lie. If you decide not to invoke your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and instead you lie, now we have leverage. So here's what I would say to every single witness that I put before the grand jury that I thought might lie. I said, I will make you one promise before we walk into that grand jury room. If you lie to this grand jury, I will ask the grand jury to consider indicting you for perjury. If your lie is about a material matter, something of relevance to their investigation, and if we have the evidence to prove you lied, I will ask this grand jury to indict you for perjury. I will ask this grand jury to indict you for obstructing justice, obstructing the grand jury investigation, and I will ask this grand jury to indict you for accessory after the fact. Because if you lie about Donald Trump's crimes, you're helping him get away with those crimes, and therefore you're an accessory after the fact to his crimes. By the way, I'm going to investigate you for conspiracy too, because it may be that you are in a criminal agreement with others to tell lies and try to help Donald Trump. Are we clear? Do you understand what I'm saying? Do Do you have any questions? Now let's go into the grand jury and tell the truth, because I don't want to have to ask them to indict you. I've got enough work to do. I gave some variation of that speech hundreds and hundreds of times. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it had the desired effect and people told the truth in the grand jury, sometimes it didn't and they lied in the grand jury, and then I had to make good on my promise and indict them if the evidence supported an indictment. And the beauty of having somebody lie in the grand jury, you know, it's not a beautiful thing. I'd prefer they tell the truth, but the beauty of a lie is that I then had leverage over them, maybe leverage I didn't have going in to the grand jury, and now I can indict them for potentially perjury, obstruction, accessory after the fact, conspiracy, and who knows what else. And then I could flip them. I could develop them as cooperating witnesses. I could have them enter a plea agreement with cooperation that required their truthful testimony against the target of the investigation. So, who might these liars be that the Georgia grand jury said, you know, we believe they lied to us? Well, we don't know because we've got all those redactions. We will know, hopefully, before too long. But who are some of the people who testified before that Georgia state grand jury, who didn't want to, but Fani Willis fought long and hard and aggressively, and she secured their testimony. She compelled them to appear before the grand jury. Well, let's see. Guys like Rudy Giuliani, Mike Flynn, Lindsey Graham, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, and others. You know, what a rogues gallery there. Are some of them the likely liars? I think the question kind of answers itself. And friends, let's wrap up with this, because whereas much of this grand jury report is redacted, you know, page after page after page is blank, so we don't yet know who the grand jury concluded should be indicted, but we'll know soon enough. The judge did release the conclusion of the report. Let me just read you a sentence or two from the conclusion of the grand jury's report. If this report fails to include any potential violations of referenced statutes that were shown in the investigation, we acknowledge the discretion of the district attorney to seek indictments where she finds sufficient cause. That's a beautiful passage, friends. After the grand jurors spent months with Fani Willis and her team, they said, in the event we missed something, right? We didn't capture all of the evidence, the information, the statutes that were violated, and there is something else that needs to be charged. We entrust the district attorney, Fani Willis, to do the right thing and to bring those charges. So all that is left at this point is to say, District Attorney Fani Willis, do your thing. Because justice matters. It's coming, friends. It's coming. As always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.